Hey guys, we're so excited to be back with the Troy Cast. We have an amazing guest today. My name is Ashley and I sit as the Chief Operating Officer here at the Troy Center. And this week we are celebrating Red Ribbon Week, also known as Spirit Week here around the Central Valley. And our guest today is going to talk a little bit about his life experiences, the experiences that drive his work now, and we're just going to get a better insight of who he is as a person. So please welcome Mr. Jeff Gonzalez to our podcast. Jeff is a employee here at the Mission. We like to call him Front Desk Jeff. You might know him as just Jeff, but Jeff, welcome to our Troy Cast today.
Thank you. Yeah, so Front Desk Jeff, that kind of sums up what my position here with the Mission is. But it entails or has more details to it, kind of like a triage in some sort of sense to our neighbors that come in. When the neighbors that come in, be either out of a situation immediately or just looking for information, just kind of have to decipher where and how I can be of service. And once I, lack of a better term, hand them off to the next step, that then my service isn't done. It's not done because establishing a relationship from once the neighbor walks in the door is the goal. So making them feel welcome, dignified, and not shamed for coming in, asking for help first and foremost. You're here for a reason. My mentality towards it is like a 911 and EMS approach to it, but instead of like an ESS, an emergency social service, not a medical service. And being able to make them feel comfortable enough to be vulnerable. And those making them feel welcome in the sense that they can do that, and then let the other hands do their job
Absolutely.
As we are of course we're a Christ-centered organization, and it says love your neighbors, you love yourself, and so that's where the term for me neighbor comes in.
Yeah.
And every person that walks in that door, every one of us, we all have some sort of need.
Yeah. Wow. It's really interesting because every time I get to encounter you, Jeff, and we see each other often because we work in the same building, there's always some sort of wisdom that comes from him. And even my personal experience and just experience with our neighbors, I know that you always bring so much value to the table. Now, what I would love to learn more is about your personal story and kind of how you ended up here serving and working with the Mission. And I would just like to hear more.
Yeah, well, part of how I approach my position is because of experience. I became the guy I said I never wanted to be. I was, I had, I was born in the 70s. So in the 80s, I was a latchkey kid. So at least that's a term coined for no after school programs.
Oh, okay.
Latchkey kid.
Okay.
You go home.
So So what would they call those kids now?
Oh man, that's a good question because this culture has so many terms for themselves. That's a good question. I like what you guys call it. What you guys
impressionable youth.
Impressionable youth. That'd probably be the best term or what to call them because I didn't have the internet. My internet was Yellow Pages. I got home. You don't open the door for nobody and don't turn on the stove and you're good.
Okay.
That's what we call a latchkey kid. You had a key around your neck. That's it. And then you get home. And you made sure you was home and you called mom, called dad, and let them know you're in the door, and that's it. Impressionable, yeah, because there's so many things out there. Everything's at their fingertips. So I had growing up like that, had a lot of time on my hands. being the oldest of three, I had a lot of responsibility on my hands. So at some point in time, when I could cut loose of that responsibility, I did.
Yeah.
So moving forward, I had a rough patch in life, and I saw the opportunity to cut loose that time.
So you took that opportunity and said, "I'm out."
I ran with it. I'm out. I took the opportunity and I ran with it, and that path turned into utter destruction. Where I had to reevaluate my life, and if I could be real candid.
Yeah, absolutely, please.
That's the term is, jail, drugs, the company I was keeping, all that, put all that in a big pot, you mix it up, some people come out with a cake, I came out with a mud pie. And that landed me where I found myself having to join a program to separate myself from that lifestyle, from that thought process and the company I was keeping. And so by doing that, I got to establish my core values back at the mission. I was really down. I was sleeping in abandoned cars. I was, doing odd jobs just to feel safe in some spaces. And I tried to attempt bettering my life, going back to college and graduating from college and doing stuff like that. But my mindset wasn't straight. My mind wasn't, any little thing knocked my foundation, and I ended up back into those old belief systems, that old belief patterns, and then back doing the same thing, back hanging out with the same people, being comfortable with what was comfortable.
Absolutely. That's also incredibly powerful, and thank you for sharing that, because I think that it's so relatable. It's so relatable, and I love how you said you had to come back to your core values, because yesterday in our tech program, which is our after-school program, we talked about values, and we talk about that with our kids. Like, what are your values? And it's an important question, because a lot of times they don't know. And so if you don't know what your values are, how are you going to come back to them? How is that going to keep you grounded? I also just want to circle back to you just sharing, how, some people come out with the cake and some people come out with the mud pie. And that's one of my favorite things about you is you always have these good analogies, to really help give others a visual of what you're trying to articulate. And I think that that's amazing. But, just going back to who you were, the man you were when you were at your lowest, and just the drugs and all of those things, because since we are going into Red Ribbon Week, which is supposed to be a time where, it's supposed to bring perspective to kids to stay away from drugs. How do you think your experience, what advice would you give our kids? Just being where you've been, overcoming, moving forward, what advice would you give these, youth that are having this whole week dedicated to them to essentially celebrate, being drug-free? And come on, we all know that that's not the case everywhere, right? Yeah. Give me a little bit of insight.
So that, with me, myself, my personal experience, I did a little history on this, okay? So back in 71, there's this big war on drugs from President Nixon, right? All these drugs coming, we found out, all right? Moving forward, back in the 85-ish, we had President Reagan's wife come up with this term, say no to drugs.
Okay.
All right? And they were running with that. I remember there being commercials, and all this stuff, oh yeah, say no to drugs. This is your brain on drugs and all this stuff. Okay. You remember those commercials? So maybe not.
Yeah. I don't remember, but I can imagine what they were.
So yeah, they fry an egg in this pan, this is your brain. They have this egg.
Oh, okay.
Crack this egg, throw it in this hot pan. This is your brain on drugs.
Okay.
Fine. All right. There really wasn't the narrative. Is it narrative? The visualization wasn't there.
Okay.
Because they're like, it's just a fried egg. What is that? Okay.
Some people might like fried eggs, so they're probably thinking that's the way eggs. I want to. Yeah.
Put some sausage with it. But anyways, back to your question. So the core values and everything was for me was time. What I do with my time, and like I said, I had a lot of time when I was a kid. There was a lot of experiences. Now these kids, the children today, they have everything at their fingertips. Everything's right there, 24 hours.
Yep.
TV used to go off when I was a kid, like, you know, American flag, jets take off, and the TV was all snow. There was no nothing. That was it, time to go to bed. And now, again, with everything at their fingertips, 24 hours, 24-hour cartoons.
Yeah.
The little nuggets they give kids on mind altering or how to deal with things, and that's just TV. Let's dig into our homes, though, our home life, and how my parents and family showed me how to deal with things, or how to have a good time introducing these things, you know. And I may be falling off your question here because I'm kind of running down this dirt road real quick, but you know, the weddings, the funerals, you know, how to celebrate and how to deal with. You know, my family, being Mexican-American, you know, is like, here, take a shot of this, have a drink.
Absolutely.
You know, here it is, it's accepted. You know, in my family, my safest place, my comfort zone, where nothing can hurt me, no one can hurt me. But if we really think about it, you know, so we have all this, you know, hey, you know, say no to drugs, say no to this, but my parents, my grandparents, they're saying it's okay.
Right.
And now we have this little taste of it, this little altering, this little feeling, and then now it turns into this is how.
Right.
It's now how I deal with stress, how I deal with depression, how I deal with a celebration. You know, and as it progresses, as well, then we have addiction.
Right.
You know, eventually it comes to some sort of addiction. You know, again, back when I was young, weed was called marijuana. Called a gateway drug.
Yeah.
Didn't believe in it or nothing. You know, it was like the most mellowest thing for me because it was accepted.
Yeah.
Wasn't legal, but it was accepted. Now it's legal, and they give you education on it. And they tell you all these things, you know, about how health properties and all this stuff, right? So again, now the acceptance is going global, but they don't tell you about how it lowers your boundaries, how it breaks down your boundaries, how it, you know, gives you self-esteem issues, lowers your core values. You know, so this time now we're investing into this.
Right.
You know, for me again, time investing. I invested a lot of time, obviously, into dealing with things. I like to use the analogy like spider webs. All right, so like the drugs, we're dealing with just the symptom.
The symptom. Wow, that's powerful.
The spider, all right, the symptom being the webs. The spider, is more like abandonment issues, rejection, depression, self-esteem, things I didn't learn how to deal with at a young age, you know, from probably elementary.
Yeah.
You know, and going back to the Say No to Drugs campaign back then in the 80s, you know, that didn't invade until it started getting into elementary schools.
Right.
As adults back in the 50s and stuff, it was fine. It was just war on drugs. We got to stop the drugs, you know, drug dealers and that kind of stuff. But now it invaded our schools, our middle schools, our elementary schools. These kids, and now it's a problem. Right.
That's so. Everything you're saying is definitely not only relatable but real, because it really does start with that time. And oftentimes at the Troy Center, we talk about that idle time. What are our students doing? What are our youth doing after school? What are they doing when mom's working, or if they're being raised by grandparents or parents are working, right? What are they actually doing? And now they have the phones. So, and anything's accessible, right? Anything's accessible. So I love your perspective on just, you know, how it started and the symptoms and the spider webs, because you're right. it is a symptom, and we were actually talking to our intern yesterday about this specific topic, and she alluded to a lot of her peers, which she's a high school intern, talk about being stressed, and so they vape or they use marijuana or whatever the case is, and so I think you just hit on so many different areas, but ultimately coming back to time, and even now, time is something that can be really, really beneficial, or it can be detrimental to I think everyone, right? Not just our youth. So I appreciate that insight, and I just kind of want to go back to this, and it just keeps coming up in my mind about, do you think that if you had, some after school program or mentorship program during that idle time, do you think that your life might have turned out different?
Yes. I strongly believe that, So how do I start this? I don't want to be real long-winded, but it's like and I'm not blaming my parents, but if yes, they wanted me to be safe, so go straight home, lock the doors, you're safe, yes. Right? And the double-edged sword part of this is because there are people out there that will lead you down the wrong path. Right. So that's why my parents were that way. Then now we have the Troy Center. People dedicated to that time. Yeah. What you're doing with that time. That time is undefeated.
Wow.
You can't get it back. You can only waste it. Give it up, and what you do with it either is sometime or all the time.
Wow.
There's sometime and there's all the time. So. Later on in life, for me, I had to learn to all the time be focused. Wow. Stay focused. There's the time part. There's just so many levels of this time thing. What we do with our time and building on that. And that time, the kids, our youth, us adults as parents. Yeah. Because this is a generational. This is a learned behavior. Generational learned behavior. Yeah. As we dig deeper into Red Ribbon Week. Yeah. Unfortunately, we only celebrate it 1 week. But I think it needs to be impressed on everybody every day. Just like you would Christ, just like you would your job. Yeah. Income. Survival. However, that every day there's people out there hustling. There's people out there working. And that's what they do with their time.
Right. Wow.
And we forget about what else is out there.
That's that time piece is crucial. Now, I just want to end on this note, and it's kind of a two-part question here. What would you tell the youth now? What would be a piece of advice you would give them? And also, what would you tell yourself? Like, what would be something you would say to a younger you?
To a younger me?
Yeah.
Okay. Be a better steward of your time. Be more intentional. And I use those words, hopefully, so we have this internet thing, right? And I look at it as like we should have the smartest kids in the world because all the answers are at their fingertips. I had to go back and look in dictionaries, encyclopedias, had to actually do the physical lookup to find out the information, But everything's at their fingertips, And so, so to be a better steward of your time, be intentional with it, Maybe stay off the TikTok.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And get into the Merriam-Webster dictionary. Get in and look up the words and the meaning. Those words have meaning, but be a better steward of your time, what you're doing with your time, because the habits you learn now is going to develop the character that you want to be. I hope that sounded right.
Wow.
Right? No, that's you want to live a life of opportunity and not charity.
Wow.
You don't want someone to always give you something or have to hand you. You want to choose to live the life of I have choices.
Right.
Don't be left with no choice or lack of choices. this where this drugs and stuff, they take away that. They take away your they're socially crippling you. You know, there's a lot of things you don't learn, and you don't get to expose. You know, you don't expose yourself because of seclusion, because of this is my group, this is my area, this is my hood. You know, this drugs, they just do so much to a person, and one person turns into two people is a group, 3 or more. Now you start looking at community.
Wow.
Community, streets, neighborhoods, cities, states. Here we go.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation, and it was extremely powerful. I appreciate your intention behind this talk. If you are not connected to us here at the Troy Center, go ahead and click the link below. We are on every social media platform. We come out with content specific to our youth, and we would love for you to join our community. This has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining our Troycast, and we will see you next time.